Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Chime Strength and Performance podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Coach Andrew Saillant to share his background as a coach and the current state of his business. The coaches will also be talking about their experiences in the physical therapy field and their experiences with their own powerlifting coaches. If you like this, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, and check out our content on Instagram at TriumphSNP. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Andrew, did you want to go over why you started powerlifting coaching first? Like, how did you get into it? How did you start coaching people in this area in particular?
Yeah, I can do that. I can kind of run through
Sure.
the
Let's hear
story.
it. Give us the spiel.
So I started lifting weights in high school as part of like training for track, which I was horrible at. Realized that while I was participating in track that I just liked the training a lot more. So I started just going to the gym. First started at Planet Fitness, as many people do, I'm sure. And then I started going to like a local, kind of like a Gold's Fitness kind of place. It's like a one-off franchise. I started going there with my neighbor who lived across the street from me. We were like best friends as kids, and he was going to this gym, so I started going there. And he was like the first person that I coached, like wrote programming for, like kind of did anything related to coaching now.
He's an OG.
He's like OG. Shout out my boy Eddie.
Do you still coach him?
No, well, kind of. Like I write programming for him, but I don't like coach him.
Okay.
Like
So yeah,
I'll
you kind
just
of still
send
coach
him.
him.
I'll send him like a program. I think the last one I wrote for him was like probably like in the summer. So I'll send him like just like a week of programming, and he just kind of like does his thing with it. But
I had a friend like that in high school that I did that for.
yeah, man, that's like I feel like that's how a lot of people probably start too, right? You just like
Oh yeah, 100%.
start
Yeah.
coaching your friend, like, and I don't even really know how, like, why I did that. Like, I think once I started getting into lifting weights, like I started absorbing a lot of like social media content, like YouTube, that kind of stuff. And I would honestly, what I probably did.
First?
Oh, dude,
Who were you
at
watching?
first, so I was heavily influenced by the Jersey Juice Gang. So David Lade, Dylan McKenna,
Oh yeah,
Quinn Vitale,
100%.
heavily influenced by those guys. There was also some guys who were part of Phase Fitness. If you guys
Oh my
remember
God,
that
dude.
was a thing.
What a throwback.
Right. So Phase Jasper, Phase Sensor were
Bro.
like they were probably like my first introduction to like lifting weights in terms of like social media were those guys. And then Russ Orhe was a huge one. He was like the first guy that kind of got me more into like the serious powerlifting stuff. Like David Lade and those guys, they were kind of doing their own thing, like the power building thing.
Yeah.
Like heavy squat, bench, deadlift, single, and then 4x12 kind of that kind of stuff. But Russ was like the first guy who got me like introduced me to serious powerlifting. So fast forward to after I graduated high school, I did my first meet, which was 2019 Northeast Regionals in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun. I prepped into that meet using Russ Swoll's Volume 1 power building program.
Oh my God.
Which was, if you're familiar with that, it was essentially like a block periodization program where it's like the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of it were like 3x8s on squat, bench, and deadlift, and then it moved to 4x6s and 5x3, whatever it did.
Yeah.
So that was my first program into a meet. And then let's see, from there, I went to school, and then I started working with Serene, who was one of the first Team Nori coaches.
Oh yeah.
So I started working with her think it was my sophomore year, because freshman year was all messed up with COVID, but I won't get into that. But that was my sophomore year. I started working with Serene, who like really took my like interest and passion in powerlifting to the next level from like my training with her, and seeing like the way that she did things, like being an online coach. I had never experienced that kind of thing before. So that like really opened my eyes to the possibility of like being a powerlifting coach. So, and Serene was awesome. Like we did a meet together. I worked with her for about a year, and then she moved on to she's getting a PhD in kinesiology or whatever subject. I forget what it was. But so yeah, that was like I said, that was my first introduction to coaching in general. And during that time, I was also a personal trainer at my college. I got certified when I was a freshman, and that was like also like the big intro point for me being a coach. So, you know, obviously personal training isn't the same as what we do now as coaches, but, you know, writing programs for people who are not your best friends and like taking them through, teaching them how to actually do movements in more creative ways than just like, you know, your basic thing that you could teach like, you know, a regular, a kid basically who are, so that was the first time that I really kind of took the step of becoming like a more professional coach. So I did that through my whole college, all my college years. I was personal training. And then really it wasn't until my senior year of college, I met this guy who would go on to become my first like SSS client. His name is Chris. And he reached out to me because he was dealing with like some kind of injury, and he knew me through like a mutual friend, and he just basically asked if I would, you know, try to help him with some programming, because he was a power lifter, and he knew that I was a power lifter, and so we just kind of met in the middle. And then from there, like I got some word of mouth referrals from him and like friends of his. They came to me and like were interested in programming because they saw what I was doing with him. And then it just kind of started to take off within like my college community. There were some people that I knew, or like I got, like I said, word of mouth referrals to me for powerlifting programming, people who were interested. And then at the same time at my college, there was like the formation of an official barbell club, so Boston College Barbell, and that was like the next thing that kind of took me up a level in terms of coaching. They ran a mock meet in April of my senior year, and there was, you know,
What year was that? Like what year?
That was 2023. That was last year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yep. So that was, like I said, that was like the thing that even took me to a higher level, because before it was just kind of like I had the SSS brand already. I kind of came up with that when I first got maybe like my first like 3 or 4 lifters, but it wasn't like a legit thing. And then after that mock meet, I had met some people who competed, who were expressed interest in being coached by me. And from there, like when I started working with them and some other, you know, more serious powerlifters at that time, my roster grew to probably like 12 at that point, and that was when it really started to get more serious. And then I've kind of just been rocking and rolling from there. So it's been really only about a year of me, a year in a month or so of me doing like formal powerlifting coaching under the SSS moniker.
That's hype.
But
That is hype.
yeah, so it's been a long road, a lot of like small steps and progression to get where I'm at now. But
When did, sorry if I missed this, but when did SSS like become a thing? When did you like brand that, or at least like come up with the idea of making that your name?
I came up with the idea probably like around November-ish of 2022.
Okay.
And
It's right
literally
around when we
all I
started TSP.
That
Really?
is actually, that's crazy.
We started September, yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So really at that point, all I did was just like in the top left corner of the program that I was writing for however many people I had at the time, I just wrote like Saillant Strength Systems, like in a like a merged cell. But then I kind of like launched the brand more seriously it was January 1st of 2023. So like the first day of the new year of 2023, I created the Instagram, and I made my first post, and I put out a little bit of like informative content. My first 3 posts were like technique stuff for like squat, bench, and deadlift. So yeah, the idea came about in like November 2022, and then it became more official in the start of the new year, 2023.
I
Yeah, I
got, I
feel
got
like
a, or
Go
go
ahead.
down.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I didn't hear about SSS until last year, so it makes sense that that was when it was a thing. But I also didn't hear about SSS until one of your info posts. I forget which one it was. I feel like that's how like every coach finds each other. It's just through like
One
informative
info
content.
post that just does well.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I forget which one it was. I saw it and then I was like, huh, that
The
sounds like a familiar name. And then I think I tapped in her profile and then I saw that you were local and I was like, oh, okay. And then I think that's when we started talking. Around then, I forget, probably like early summer or something.
the first one that I made that really kind of like blew up, I guess like I got over like 40 likes on it, was
Nice.
I made a post about like breaking through plateaus.
I think that's the one I'm
Um,
thinking of. Let me check. I'm gonna go to
Was
the
there
page.
one that Steve reposted?
yes, that was the one. That was the
Okay,
one about
yeah,
breaking
yeah.
That,
plateaus.
yeah.
I think that's where I
Steve
found you
and
too.
Nori and Sean Noriega reposted it, and I gained like 150 followers from it. It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
that's
That sounds about
that's
right.
how it goes. The only times I've ever had like big chunks of followers gained in a short period of time is when either like Steve DeNovi,
Yeah.
Sean Noriega, or something like that reposts one of my info
Yep.
posts.
Yep. So that was like the first one. I probably made that around like summertime, like Deb said.
Yeah.
And then that was like making that post and like seeing like Steve, who's like my absolute idol at this point in coaching, like seeing him repost that and give me recognition for like making that kind of like creative content was like the first indication, I guess, that I could like actually be like a really good coach, like
Mhm.
getting that affirmation, I guess,
Yeah.
was huge for my confidence
Yeah.
as a coach.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of like recognition is super motivating. I know like the other day, Marcellus just like liked one of my stories, and I was like, holy shit, I gotta like bang out an info post right now.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
get like he can see, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So having like the reposts and just the interaction with people that you look up to is huge.
yeah. And just having that feeling that, like you said, that somebody who you look up to, somebody who you take a lot of inspiration from, sees your stuff and appreciates it is so huge. Even if you get nothing from it, like like I said before, like when Steve reposted that one post of mine, it got me a ton of followers. But even if that didn't happen, just like knowing that he saw that and appreciated the effort that I put into it was huge. Like you said, a big confidence booster. Gratifying,
Yeah.
exactly.
Andy, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, because this might be an interesting conversation. Did you take clients for free when you were initially kind of starting out?
Yes. I didn't start charging people until I graduated college. So I was coaching for free for let's call it like 8 months. Let's say I started in like September, October of 2022. Everyone I took on at that point, like those first couple of people, were totally free. Everyone that I took on up until that mock meet that I was talking about was totally free. And then everyone from that point until I graduated from school was totally free. And then I started charging like super cheap, like literally like $25 a block, like dumb cheap. Yeah, so that was the first time that I started charging. So I did it for free for 8 months.
And then to go off that, because this is the part that I feel like would be kind of interesting is, do you guys have any points that you'd want to share about like transitioning from that, like, because I think we all started out coaching people for free, transitioning from that like small subset of like free people to actually getting the ground running, because we're all like relatively around the same level of, I think, roster size at this point.
Mhm.
So like transitioning from those first like, I don't know, 4 or 5 like free clients to like getting close to 10, getting over 10, and then getting into like the mid-teens and kind of having things pick up a bit more exponentially from there.
I think we can all agree, and I also think it's also similar in terms of like making info posts in a weird way,
Yeah.
because it's like you don't really make informative content hoping for it to like explode or hoping to monetize it, you know what I mean? Because that's not going to
Mhm.
happen. You just make it because you want to make it. Like I forget what my first post was. I think it was something about like just something about primary days or something, but I was like, ooh, I have this fun thought that I want to share with the world. I'm just gonna write it on a colorful slide and post it on Instagram. Um, but yeah, along the lines of starting for free, it's the same thing. It's like you're not well, at least starting out, you weren't really, well, at least I wasn't hoping to like monetize it or do anything crazy with it. Like, I didn't really refer to myself as a coach for the first like year that I was coaching because I didn't really have that as a goal. I just kind of programmed for myself, programmed for multiple people for free for like 8 or 10 months, until I got people reaching out, kind of like Andrew said. And then I was like, yeah, this is going to be a time investment. So I think the big thing is it's like we didn't really have like that. Someone asked me this on my Q&A on my story, and it was pretty much this exact same answer where it's like you just start because you want to start and you want to be good, and I'm sure you guys can agree, and then once you're good, everything kind of swings into effect from there because you just start out prioritizing the right things, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know if that answers what you're asking or not.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the question again? Pricing?
Basically like transitioning from charging for free to actually building a roster.
Oh,
Like how
right,
do you,
right, yeah.
what are the moves?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like just like going from free to my first rate, like I think I had like 5 clients for free, and I coached them for however many months before I started charging. My first rate was $40. Um, and whenever you raise prices, it's like the scariest thing ever. You feel like half your roster is going to drop you, and you're not going to be a coach anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, at least for me, so far, it hasn't changed. Every single time I've raised prices, I've been like sitting on the email for an hour, being like, "Oh, do I send it?" And then nothing ever happens. But yeah, I don't know. It was never really, or I think at the beginning when I was raising prices, it was like, okay, once I get to 5 clients, I'll start charging. Once I get to 10 clients, I'll charge $60. Once I get to, but I feel like at this point, with the last, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 price changes, it's just been like, oh, I feel like my service is worth more now. Like, I feel like I'm a better coach. So I feel like it's time to charge more for what I'm offering.
So for me, like I said, I started charging after I graduated from college. And really the only reason that I started charging was because I wanted to keep coaching. And at that point, I had a roster of like probably 12 to 15 people. Um, so like it was, it was taking up a pretty significant chunk of my time in the week. And at that point, I knew that I was going to be starting working a full-time job. Um, so, in my head, I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this, but I can't justify working 40 hours a week full time and still doing all of this for free when knowing that it takes me like an additional, you know, 15-ish hours a week probably to handle 12 to 15 lifters.
Mhm.
So at that point, I was like, how can I continue doing this and make it worthwhile for myself? So really the only logical explanation was to start charging for it. And everyone at that time that I was coaching was very receptive to it. Like I said, I started super cheap, like dirt cheap. And so yeah, everyone was willing to pay me for it. People were willing to pay me before I started charging anyway. Like I had people
Yeah.
saying, you know, you don't have to do this for free. I would pay you. But yeah, that was kind of how I started. I transitioned from free to paid.
I feel like
Has everyone here
the
seen the? Oh, go ahead.
I feel like the biggest thing is essentially like what Devin was saying. It's just like you provide a high quality service and you care about providing a high quality service, and the rest is just gonna like work out. Like if your priorities are on any of the other facets, it's like I think we've all seen it a little bit too in certain instances where people don't prioritize the right things in when they're in that like early phase, and then it just like stuff to recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
You try to be like all businessy off the bat.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to get at, like off the bat. Like, if you're starting doing the right things, you don't even have money in mind, and then when the money part actually comes in, it just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say is has everyone here seen the what's it called? The business side of powerlifting coaching, the Steve DeNovi YouTube video. That's kind of where I was.
Yes.
Yeah, where I
Yes.
that's the playbook I was following in terms of how I was charging money.
I remember when
Absolutely.
we were doing those meetings over the summer before we started TSP. Like I personally hadn't watched that many of Steve's videos before like we started doing those meetings, and you guys kept like mentioning them. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna look into this, and then you guys were like, oh yeah, you like watch these videos before we like launch it, and very glad I did.
Yeah.
It was very helpful.
Yeah, because you're okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was gonna change the topic.
Say, Andy, your first clients were under TSP.
Yeah, like I
forget
had
that
0
sometimes.
clients before we like launched TSP. Like us announcing it was like, hey, I'm gonna coach.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I had Mav, or the people that I still coach currently is just Mav. And then there were 4 or 5 other people that I took on for free. Like I posted along with like the story that was like, hey, I'm gonna take, 5 to 6 people on for free. Maybe in the next like couple months, depending on where things go, like start charging after a certain point. But I did my internship at Champion, like in-person strength conditioning. Like I just graduated at Merrimack for my exercise science degree. And I had like coached like friends here and there in the past, so it wasn't like I was like completely new to it. And then I did a lot of I was self-coached at that point. I did a lot of my like own research and things like that. So I felt like relatively competent going into it. And then just like people were making progress off the bat and enjoying the service I was providing, because I also had a lot of good insight from Chris and Devin starting out. I definitely framed a lot of like the general like coaching duties after like what they do. So made it pretty easy to just like follow in their footsteps and kind of learn that way.
Sick, dude. I thought all of you guys were already like kind of established already, and you like made a super group.
It was just them two, and they were like, "Hey, you want to do this?"
I don't know if we were established.
How many were not established?
I think I had like.
How many clients did you guys have, Chris and Devin, when you guys started?
10, 12.
Yeah. Dude, I think less, honestly.
You think? I
think so.
Chris, I think you had like I feel like 5 or 6, and Devin had like 8.
I had like 10, maybe less. It had to have been less than 10.
I think I don't think that's right. I don't think we had
none of us were at 10, or none of you guys were at 10.
I don't know, but it was probably around 10.
Because I remember
I thought we were further along than that.
No,
maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because I remember when I like around like November, December-ish, I was getting close to 10, and I was like, oh, I almost have like the same amount of clients as like Devin.
Wait, when was the Cambridge Strength outdoor meet?
That was the summer
2022.
Was that before TSP?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had more than 10.
Okay, yeah. See,
did you?
I'm trying.
I think I had like 14 or 15 during that meet.
Really?
Yeah, I remember. I have this weird light bulb memory of someone asking me how many clients I have at that meet, and then I answered with like 14 or 15 or something. So
that was the first meet that I met Andy at.
Yeah.
Andy was the first one of you.
Oh, you competed at that meet, didn't you?
I competed.
We worked in on the same rack.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, you did too, Andy. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm trying to find the initial text that I sent out to everyone when we started.
Oh, I know
so I can
exactly
see
what you're talking about.
I can see exactly how many clients, but I don't remember what I sent. So I can't look it up.
Yeah.
Didn't you send it in the group chat a couple days ago?
I think I sent it like a few weeks ago.
Oh.
So that'd be hard. It's hard to find. I guess it's not important. But, oh yeah, you
So
both
I was-
competed at CSC, right? I forgot about that. That was a
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting meeting.
You battled it out. Were you 100 at that point?
I was a 100. Yes.
Nice.
Who won?
Me, I think.
Yeah. Andy. Yeah, for sure.
And you were 100?
Yeah.
Oh wait, yeah. You bulked up.
It was a 90 my first meet, and then
Yeah.
it was 100 since.
I remember when I was prepping for that meet, there was a friend of mine at CSC who I would train with, Adam, lifting flung. And
He did that at me too.
he did that meet as well.
Yeah.
And he would, cause he was a 100 as well. He would always
Yeah.
like send me your training videos and be like, this guy's strong. We got to watch out for him.
Because I remember
funny.
I forget if he followed me during that prep, and
Yeah,
I
he
saw
must
his
have.
name on the roster, and I was like, oh, I'm competing against this guy.
Yeah. he
And
must
then I was doing like all the stalking. I think he was like the closest one, and I was like, oh shit,
have. Yeah.
he's a
I
fat
mean,
deadlift.
He does have a fat deadlift. He's strong. But
We always talk on
won the
Instagram
class
now.
by a mile. You won that class by a mile. You squatted like mid fives and benched like mid threes.
I think I squatted
Deadlifted mid fives.
I think I squatted 242, and then I missed 255 on my third, which like shouldn't have even been loaded.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then
That's
I
a
think I
big jump.
benched. Yeah,
12.5 kilos.
yeah.
That's a big jump.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
And then I think I benched 155, and I tore my thumb on my 2 red warm up in the warm up room, and then I think I got 2 attempts, and then I missed my third. Forget what I pulled. Oh no, 262, because that's still my meet PR to this day.
Oh yeah, you did PR at Odyssey.
Yeah, I pulled 252 at Odyssey. That was sumo.
Yeah, and you like missed your third by like that much.
Yeah, it was grip. So like if I could have locked it out, but it was just gonna slip. And I was like, yeah. It's the same thing both times.
Yeah.
Not this time though.
So Andrew, before
Yes.
we transition into topic number 2, I'm curious where you think, or your goals with what you have planned with SSS, because you just got new shirts and everything, and I feel like at least compared
Yeah.
to when you started, you've got quite the roster now.
Well, so now I actually only have 15 lifters on my roster right now. There was a time when I had 18, and that was or 19, and that was like the most that I had. Down to 15 right now. The goal for this year is really to just I have a couple primary goals. The first is be at as many local meets as I possibly can.
The good
next
goal.
ones. I'm sorry.
I said that's a good goal.
Oh, good goal. Yes. I just want to be present in the local scene as best as I can. I also want to, a rough goal I had at the start of this year was to like average getting 1 athlete a month. So like 12 throughout the year, that would put me at around 25 by the end of the year, assuming that I keep most of my people, maybe 1 or 2 drop. And at that point, I would very likely be able to go part-time at my like current job and then do coaching also part-time. So half and half. Those are like my main goals. I don't really have anything like super specific in mind. Like I don't want to have like this number of clients, like charge this much.
Yeah.
But I want to continue to level up my service, continue educating myself throughout the year. Powerlifting now has been super helpful for that. Interacting with you guys in the council has been super beneficial for my continuing my education, and then continue just to like kind of level up step by step. I don't have like I said, I don't have any like big strides in mind for the year, but just doing what I can, trying to get better every day.
Is this a long-term goal for you? Like, are you looking to like coach for as long as you can?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
This is like coaching is, I can truly say, like the only thing I've ever truly felt passionate about in my life in terms of like career prospects, right? I thought about a lot of things when I was in college. Like I started as a physics major. I was going to be an astrophysicist, and then switched to physical therapy, and then I switched to like biological science, and then physical therapy again, and all this stuff. I've never like really felt passionate about anything besides powerlifting and powerlifting coaching. So it's 100% like a long-term goal. If I am able to do it full time as like a career, 100% would do it, hands down.
I think I have a DM conversation between us from the summer of 2022. I forget if it was after the meet, but it was during when I was doing my internship at Champion. I posted like a Q&A on my story, and someone was like, "Oh, why aren't you like something about PT?" And I remember you swiped up on it. It was like, "Why don't you want to do PT school anymore?" And at the time, you were like, "Oh, I want to do PT school." And I was like, "This dude's going through the exact same thing as me. Like,
yeah,
I wonder if he's gonna like."
And we have gone through like the same life.
Yeah,
the same life.
There are a lot of people in this space who have gone through a similar process with the exercise science / PT stuff. Because I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. I thought I was passionate about becoming a physical therapist, and then I worked in physical therapy, and was like, never mind.
Yeah.
Right now,
pretty much how it goes.
It's just like not. I don't want to like talk about this one if we don't want to put too much time on it, but like it's completely and obviously depends on the setting, because like I got to see like what Champion was essentially like the top 1% of what like a PT is going to be able to obtain. Like it's cash based. They literally do whatever they want. They have access to like all the best tech, like just so many resources.
A complete anomaly. That is not normal in the physical therapy field. Like
being able to see what they do there and kind of how they operate there, and compare that to, I worked at like an outpatient clinic for almost like 2 years, right out of grad, because I graduated a year early, because I was like, oh, I'm going to graduate a year early. Like I finished my bachelor's in 3 years, and then I was like, I'm going to work at a PT clinic for a year, then apply to PT school, and then go to PT school. And then I worked, and I was like, there's no fucking shot that I want to go to PT school and like waste all this money to come out and like, not to sound like, not to put it down or anything, but like have it be this, because that's most likely where you're going to end up as like a new grad of PT school. You're probably going to end up in an outpatient clinic for a big company, and then it's just like it was very, very not what I imagined.
And it's nothing really against the PTs.
Yeah,
it's just it's the system that it is.
It's the healthcare system. It's not about physical therapists. All of the physical therapists that I work with are super smart, but they are bogged down by the system that they work in.
Yeah, overloaded.
It also like just incentivizes people to like think a certain way and kind of treat the profession a certain way, which isn't like patient focused, right? You're like advertised, oh, these and then it's just like, oh, it's
billable
money.
Units focused. It's not about people and making them better. It's about how many units can you bill this person to the insurance and get the most reimbursement. That's all that they care about, honestly.
And again, not to be like shame on you, but like it's just set up. They're doing this for a living. It's like set up to be like, okay, if you want to make a living off of this, you have to play this game. And it's just like the complete opposite of, from the outside perspective. Like I'm sure all of us have clients who have been like, oh, I'm going to go see a PT for this. Like I have this random pain. I'm going to go see a PT. And then it's just like, from the perspective of having been in there and knowing what the intention is 90% of the time of the PT, it's kind of just like, don't do that, come on. And then like they're gonna go see the PT, and then they're gonna like think that whatever the PT says is like the holy grail because they have their doctorate. And it's like, yeah, they're smarter than me, but it's like the intention is probably not what it seems.
Because if someone tells you that they're going to PT for some low back pain, I bet you could probably write down exactly what their protocol is going to be.
100%.
Like you don't have to do a consultation. You don't have to like talk to them at all. You just know
tilt 3x10 clamshell, sideline clamshell.
Yeah. There's not a lot of creativity, which is kind of what drew me in to begin with. Is what I wanted to do, because like, I don't know, you see these PTs on social media, like I don't know, I love David Gray. He's awesome. I don't know if you follow him, but like you see the way he treats it is like all these different methods and really tailoring it to the patient who's usually an athlete, which isn't the case in most PT clinics. But then you actually work in it, and it's like, you know, a lot of cookie cutter stuff.
100%. I'm the only one here without the PT experience, but I will say it feels like I feel super lucky, like being able to team up with you two, Chris and Andy, like to start TSP, because you guys are like super passionate about that. And I think we started when you both were working in a PT clinic, if I'm not mistaken. So just kind of hearing your experience was like super helpful for me, and just seeing your guys get emotional about that too.
I think was I working in the clinic at the time?
No, you quit in the winter, and then I had quit like right before I started the champion internship.
The
which was of what in the summer. It was like 2021.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, I guess it's not important.
We can talk about that for a whole episode if we want.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's about how deep we want to get into it, but
I'll come on for a part 2 and we can rant about it.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. I don't know. Do we want to move on to the next topic?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Andrew, you are working with Matt Cronin, correct?
Yes.
How has that been?
Matt is awesome, dude. He is like, Matt and I get along super well, I think. We share a lot of interests, which is actually what drew me to him in the first place. Mainly in our music taste. Matt is a big death metal guy. He's a vocalist in a death metal band. And I'm super into that kind of music too. And that was like kind of the first thing that drew me to him. Is it's kind of rare actually in tested powerlifting to be into that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people who are into like just like EDM and rap and like that kind of music. So that was like the first thing that made him stick out to me. And then of course, like he's a phenomenal coach. He's very well respected in the game. He's been doing it for a very long time. And he is now a part of powerlifting now. So I was watching some of his content before I started working with him. I started working with him in June of 2023. I reached out to him to start working with him, and it's been really good. I've been dealing with an injury in my quad that has kind of taken me out for more than a year at this point.
Yeah,
and that was kind of
that's a question I've actually been wanting to ask you, not to cut you off, but you've been injured for a while, right?
A while, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's up with that? What happened?
So this injury that I've had in my quad is like, it kind of presents like a tendonitis kind of thing, but I feel it a lot in like the lateral aspect of the quad itself. I don't really feel it in the quad tendon. And I'm not really sure exactly what causes it. I think I can point to, there was a session in like late December, early January, late December 2022 or early January 2023, where I was doing, I believe it was a hack squat set. I was pushing a hack squat set super hard. I was at a gym that I was unfamiliar with. It was my girlfriend's gym, and it was a machine that I was unfamiliar with. And I think I pushed the set just like super hard, harder than I should have, obviously. and my quad was like super sore after that for days, and it just kind of like, I feel like it just never really recovered. And I've just kind of been dealing with it for over a year now. And that was part of the reason that I reached out to Matt in the first place. Was I was self-programming at that time, and I was trying to deal with it on my own, like with my own load management strategies. I was working with an online remote PT for a little while, wasn't super effective. I was also like trying to prep for a meet at the same time. I was going to do the June Odyssey meet of that year, 2023. So I was like kind of in a scramble to get into it, or to recover. But I realized, probably by like April, May, that I wasn't going to be able to get into that meet. So I reached out to Matt in June, and we started working together. And things have been getting better slowly but surely. Have had a couple of setbacks with it. Like I still feel some pain, but things are getting better. Like my starting point of every block is getting better. We've tried a lot of different strategies for squat programming. Like right now, I'm literally doing 2 sets of low bar squat a week, one on my primary day, one on my secondary day. One is lower volume, one's higher volume, and then just kind of filling in the gaps with some accessory stuff. For a while, we were doing some SSB work. I would just basically I would have like one low bar top set in the week and then SSB everywhere else, because that didn't really seem to bother me too much, but I think we kind of ran into a wall with that. So we're starting this new strategy. I'm a week into it. I've done my 2 squat days of this block. It was my 2 sets. I've done all my accessories. Feeling pretty good so far. So we'll see. We'll see how this block goes. But yeah, Matt has been, to go back to the original question, Matt has been phenomenal in helping me deal with the injury. He's been super patient. He's been very creative with his programming strategies, and kind of like keeping me level-headed from a psychological perspective too, because he's like the chillest guy you've ever met in your life or will ever meet in your life. So he's never like shown any concern about my issue at all, even though it's probably like destroying him, trying to like figure out how to deal with me. But yeah, he's been awesome, really awesome.
So what else was the appeal besides the music, the shared music taste, and like what differentiated him, and just like compared to other coaches, why'd you pick him?
So it was a couple of things. One was that I really liked his informative content on Powerlifting Now, and like on his Instagram, like all of his old Instagram info posts were great. I always found them like very insightful and profound. Not that like other coaches don't do that kind of stuff, but it was just something about like the way that he would write and speak that just kind of like drew me in. I don't know if I can really point to anything specific, but I guess it was just kind of like his vibe, like the way that he approaches coaching and programming. It's like a very he's chill. He's a chill guy, and I resonate with that.
So you basically just thought that you could get along, and that would kind of
pretty
yield
much
productive coaching.
From like of course, like he's a great coach. Everyone at that level is a great coach.
Oh, for sure.
But when you're shopping for coaches at that level, it comes down to a personality match, pretty much, right? I think all of you guys can attest. You have coaches that are all super high level in terms of technical skill, but all of your personalities match as well. Devin, you and Steve are like 2 peas in a pod. Andy, you and Brad are like super, also same 2 peas in a pod. Chris, even you and Kelly too. I don't know as much about Kelly in terms of like personality, but from what I do know, like 100%, you guys are all cut from the same cloth as your coaches, which is what I feel like with Matt too. So
yeah, I feel like that's super useful, because it's like there's so much you can get out of how good a coach is and the service they provide. But if you guys just aren't clicking, like, someone might be more talkative, someone needs to have that, like the relationship with their coach, and they value that more. I feel like that can be a make or break for some people, you know what I mean? Even just like the way someone talks and their personality can be a big thing.
I feel like someone's like, just talk about like my own clients and stuff. I feel like I'm sure you've had the same experience. Someone's training can just be a lot more productive if you two just get along and have an easier time communicating.
Yeah.
Because if there's like
100%.
weirdness and you don't like get along and your personalities don't click, it's just harder to get messages through. So when you have someone that you're alike with, things become a lot easier.
100%. I've seen that a lot in my own athletes.
Yeah.
The ones who I can just like jive with better in terms of personality. We communicate better, and that obviously communicating better leads to better training. So 100%.
I think it was Eric Hogan. Shout out Eric Hogan.
Shout out
Who
Eric
was
Hogan.
I forget if it was on the podcast itself or just in conversation, but he mentioned something about like, and I want to say that we're all like relatively at the level where we can start to kind of vet through people who inquire, where it's like you can get on a call with someone, kind of be like, based on like the vibes of the conversation, like it's not necessarily like a guarantee. It's not just gonna be like, oh, I get an inquiry and like regardless, I'm gonna take this person. And he was like, he's super appreciative of being in that position to be able to kind of vet people's personalities, not to sound like weird and be like make it sound like a weird like clicky club, but it's just kind of like I'm gonna enjoy coaching people who I kind of like vibe with on that not personal level, but like that kind of level compared to like if you don't, it's gonna feel more transactional on both ends compared to like when you guys are clicking and when you guys are like quite literally vibing, it's gonna feel like a relationship, right? As opposed to just like this transactional, like you hop on your messaging app and you send me your feedback and I just say looks good and tell you what you need to change and then kind of send you on your way, as opposed to like their actual being back and forth and like a personal connection of some sort.
Yeah. How long's Eric been doing it? Eric's been coaching for a long time, huh?
Yeah.
Eric
Said it
that.
on
2018, I think he said. Right?
2018.
2018. That sound right? 6 years.
Yeah.
Dude, I want to be like Eric.
Dude, everyone wants to be like Eric.
Everyone wants to be like Eric. Eric's the GOAT. Shout out Eric Hogan, man.
Dude, I think yeah, I think another interesting point, and I think this was definitely one of the directions we wanted to take this question, but like do you guys want to like mention a point about each of your coaches that you feel like sets them apart or is just like a unique aspect of their service that's interesting in a way?
For me, and part of the reason I inquired to Kelly to begin with, I mean, there were a few reasons, but I didn't want someone who's going to be like, I didn't want any like coddling and be like, oh, good job. But, like I heard she was very, very blunt about everything. And that she is. So it's very, very straightforward. And not that like, that's not how a lot of coaches do it. But I don't know, that's a reason that I inquired to her. And that's definitely, I think, something that she's known for, is being very straightforward with everything.
I think
not being afraid to say bad job.
Yeah. The big thing that set Steve apart from other coaches was just like I learned so much from him. And Chris, I think someone on one of your Q&As asked this and you had a really good answer, but I think there's been two primary, I could argue three primary like sources of information that have taught me the most in coaching. It's definitely been the people I coach. I think that was your answer, Chris. Like my clients, 100%, the experience that I have. And probably you two as well, like kind of like I was saying earlier with your guys' PT experience. And I think both of you had taught me a lot about like pain management and stuff like that. So I would just say like my network of experience is probably one. And then the second one is Steve. I think anyone who knows of Steve knows about his YouTube channel and his content and all that. So that was a big inspiration. And plus, like literally, like we were saying 30 minutes ago, we would not have started our business and had it go as well as we could have hoped without the business side of powerlifting videos on YouTube, which I've watched multiple times, and I'm sure everyone in this call has as well. But yeah, like the info content was a big one for me, and just kind of seeing how passionate he is. Like you can kind of tell, it sounds silly to say, but you can tell like based on someone's internet personality how passionate they are on something. And you can see like the content creators on Instagram who are posting stuff, and it just seems like they're trying to grab attention, or they
Soulless.
have exactly like just ill intentions or something. But Steve wasn't that person. He just seemed like he was there to be the best. He was on a lot of podcasts, gave a lot of backstory stuff, so it was just kind of, I knew like if I were to be coached by him, it would feel like I was being coached by the best. And he even says it on podcasts himself. He's like, my goal is to make my roster feel like I'm the best in the world. He said that multiple times, and it's definitely like been that way for me. That was the main attraction for me.
Andrew, go.
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah, the thing with Matt is, like I said before, the main draw for me was the personality connection. But what I've seen in working with him so far that makes him, in my mind, kind of unique among powerlifting coaches is that he's very receptive to my feedback and my thoughts about where my training should go. He's been, like I was saying before, like we've been navigating this injury in my quad for the entire time we've been working together, still are. And he's been like I said, very receptive to my thoughts and opinions and like what I think that I need or what I need less of. But at the same time, he also is very good at putting his foot down when, like when I say something that, maybe I had a bad session, I was in more pain than usual, and I send him a neurotic message, and he's like, he knows I guess what I'm trying to say is that he can play many different characters as a coach.
I like that.
And I think that is extremely valuable and extremely unique to him. Because a lot of coaches out there, I think we know, just kind of, they have like one shtick and like that's all they got. But Matt is not like that. In my opinion, he's extremely well-rounded, which I appreciate a lot, and I take a lot of inspiration from that in my own coaching as well.
I feel like the biggest one for me that drew me towards Brad was kind of his view and the content that he's put out on movement. And I think movement in general, and just like the nerdy kind of like biomechanics stuff, that's actually like applicable to powerlifting. And it's not just like the super hyper like sciencey aspects of it. Is the stuff that I'm, me personally, most passionate about. Like that's the aspect of like PT that really drew me in. That's the aspect of like exercise science that really drew me in, and is like what I cared about when I was going through school. And through like my internship when I was coaching in person, with strength and conditioning, like that's the stuff that, again, I found most interesting. And then when I was kind of like browsing for coaches, it was kind of like I had an experience working with a certain coach for a certain amount of time, right? Just it was basically like guided programming. And then I worked with someone else who was similar in that sense. And I never had a experience with someone who was like super in depth in terms of like that movement analysis aspect of things. And Brad's content has all been like, I feel like pretty, I don't want to say like revolutionary in terms of like the perspectives and the kind of the stuff that he talks about, but it's like different. It's not just like the run of the mill, like, oh, you need to manage your center mass on squat. Like, what is going on to lead you to needing to manage your center mass on squat? Like, what are things that you can do that, might be a little bit more outside of the box to be able to improve that? Like, one of the things that comes to mind is that forward shift at the start of like a squat to kind of align that bar a little bit more over midfoot. Like him and John Song made an info post about that, and that was the first place that I kind of saw that. The neck pressure one is another one that I think of where he made an info post about that, and I was like, that was the first time that I had kind of heard about that. I was like, oh, that's really like that's a really good point. And it works too. And it's like you apply this stuff and it works and you see results from it. So it's not just like this kind of like, I don't know, this fairy tale magic, but it's like this, again, outside kind of out of the box thinking that actually works. And in terms of like his feedback and everything like that, it's exactly that too. It's like these perspectives that like you don't hear get talked about just like out and about. And it feels like you're hearing things from a different perspective that like really tickles a different part of your brain. As like weird as it sounds, it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way, but it works. And then you try it out, and it's like I've learned so much from him in the past couple months, and have been able to apply so much of what I've learned from him in the past couple months to clients, and it's like the results have been so good, like so satisfying to see that carry over.
There's two things that I'm really looking forward to get out of this conversation now that you bring that up. One is how you guys feel like everyone's coach has like contributed to how you coach, because I feel like all four of us can say one of your larger influences in terms of how you coach your athletes is being coached by your coach.
Yeah.
Just because they've taught you so much. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. And then the second one is communication, because I feel like, well, I don't know much about how Matt goes about things, Andrew, but Brad, Steve, and Kelly are way different, like significantly different, in my opinion, in terms of how they organize communication and have expectations set out and how they communicate. So I don't know if you guys agree on kind of bouncing ideas on those two topics or not, but I feel like that'd be super interesting.
I think communication one's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Kelly, so she lives in Australia, which is a very different time
Yes.
zone. So a lot of the communication is like, I'll train, I'll fill in my sheet, I'll send her a message at like, I don't know, 3 p.m. And then I don't expect a response until essentially the next morning, because a lot of times she's responding at like midnight, which is like her morning. So there's not a ton of like straight back and forth every day. In terms of communication, so I just have to make sure that I give like more in-depth session updates. But I think I communicate with Kelly in I think a similar way that you do, Devin, with Steve in what you send him. But it's not like a big back and forth type thing, just because there's just such a massive time difference.
Yeah, the thing, I know what you mean. Like you just kind of train, you get it done, you tell her how it went, and then it's a time zone thing. With Steve, it's very similar. The only difference isn't the time zone, or the only difference is the time zone, kinda. But it's Matt Nichols. He's in the council group chat, and he's also coached by Steve, and we kind of have talked about this before, but it's all post session. And I think kind of tying the two ideas that I mentioned together, this like the way he organizes communication within his roster has 100% easily rubbed off on me in a very positive light. But it's all post session, so he made it very clear on the onboarding call the way he wants to go about things. But it's also kind of like you kind of catch hints along the way. Like, for example, I haven't really been this type of athlete to do this, but like he's known for, you'll kind of send him a bunch of emotional feedback mid-session that he doesn't need to get to. And he'll just kind of leave you on red and let you decompress in a way. That's another example. But it's just kind of like he doesn't say that on the onboarding call. He's not going to be like, oh, if you send me this emotional feedback mid-session, I'm just going to say nothing. It's kind of like you catch the hint where you see that he leaves you on red, and then you start to realize it's like, oh, maybe I don't really need to be sending him 20 messages in the middle of my workout right now. But it's also just kind of like I said, the way he organizes it, where everything is set before you get in the session. Spreadsheet's updated. He's actively setting hours out of his day to reply to people. So if you do need to message him, he's there. But it's like everything is very well thought out. His feedback is fantastic. But yeah, I find myself, just to kind of dumb it down, the way it's been is it's like you get in and this is how I've found myself running things too, but you get in the gym, you take videos of your lifts, you fill in your sheet as you go. A lot of the cells are contingent upon the previous cell. Um, you send him videos, you give an update, he gives you feedback, and usually that's all the conversation we have, unless I have a question to ask or there's something more in detail to run through. It's usually just like I send videos, feedback, he'll give me feedback, and that's pretty much it. And I love it. It's very organized and simple, you know.
Yeah, Kelly has never set out like say, oh, you have to give me your feedback in this specific way. It's just daily communication. But I also know that if I have a bad session, I'm probably gonna freak out and say, oh my God, it's over. If I have access to just like texting in the middle of a session. So I just for my own sake just don't do that. Usually I'm not training when she's up, but sometimes I'll train at night and I just still will wait until after the session to send feedback so I don't send any stupid emotional feedback.
Andrew, I'm not sure if Matt does it similarly because he's coached by Steve or not, and I'm sure that Matt has like Steve influences Matt a similar way that he influences me. So I'm curious to
Yeah,
hear what you say.
Matt's communication system is it's very straightforward. Um, his his guidelines are essentially exactly what you laid out. It's like do your session and then send feedback,
Yep,
which is what I do anyway. Being coaches, we know how to
100%.
send the best feedback we can.
Yep.
So him and I have never like really had any issues with communication, but it's just I do my training like at night after work, and it's usually outside of his working hours. So I'll do my session, take my videos, fill in my sheet, send him the videos with my feedback. He usually gets back to me the next morning, um, and that's pretty much it. Up until this point, we he there hasn't been a lot of like technical feedback, mainly because of the issues with my quad. Like really the only thing that we're concerned about, um, or I'm assuming the only thing that he's really concerned about is can I train like with limited pain basically. So the bench has been different. He's been giving me a lot more technical feedback on bench. Um, but the main thing that we talk about is just like how do I feel in my sessions? Like do I feel trained? Um, does technique feel good? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of back and forth either. Usually like my feedback is super detailed. His feedback is as detailed too. So there's not really like questions that have to be asked or clarification for anything. So yeah, a very straightforward communication system.
I think, yes, there is some Steve influence there, obviously, but it's also just kind of him being experienced. But before Andy goes, just a quick tidbit. I found this for myself too. Um, but it's like the way that specifically is organized, where it's just like you train, feedback, feedback, the back and forth is kind of like only when necessary thing, you know what I mean? Um, it's a good way of getting all the communication done on time and not having your messenger just flooded with messages that don't need to be there, because part of the reason Steve does this is because it's like you're not taking up Steve's time that he would otherwise dedicate to getting back to other people's feedback. You know what I mean? Like I'm not begging for this back and forth or trying to have this constant conversation throughout the day with him. And if I did do that, it would likely be taking up the time for his replies to other athletes. And I've definitely found that for myself. And I actually had this conversation with Steve a month or two ago, but I was telling him, I'm like, I was probably longer than that to be honest, but like I find that I also have like working hours up until 8 p.m. and after 8 p.m. I have a bunch of people train. Then I find that when I wake up in the morning, I have a lot of feedback to give to a lot of people. And if I'm having these back and forths with people, it would be probably double that, but also like I would reply to 3 to 4 people in the morning. They'd get back to me, I get back to them, back to them, back to them, and it would just be conversation, conversation, and I still have like 6 or 7 people hanging, you know what I mean? So I really like how they do that in that sense.
That's a good point. I like that. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that's not like that's a very like only a coach would kind of think that way, I feel like. Like you're not going to get an athlete that's like texting you and probably being like, I'm probably taking up like the time that this person could be putting towards, someone else on the team. So it's a very,
Exactly.
very like humble perspective.
Yes.
To talk about Brad's communication system, I feel like probably out of all of us, his is like the most different. It's because it's the same as Kelly in terms of guidelines, where it's just kind of like his is 24 to 36 hours. Where he's like, just it doesn't have to be post session, it doesn't have to be intra session. Just like he was basically like, because I asked him, I was like, how do you want me to like communicate on the onboarding call? And he was kind of just like, you're a coach, like what you would want a good client to give to you. Basically, just give that to me. I was like,
that's what Kelly said.
Yeah. And so I essentially do post session. Like I'll be doing like my accessories sometimes, and like in between sets, I'll be sending videos and like giving feedback. But it's normally like just send all my videos, give an update on how things felt. And then in terms of like his feedback, sometimes he'll just like, he's big on like the voice memos, and he's big on just like calling. He likes a lot of FaceTime, which is the funny one. Like I think it was yesterday, for example. I sent him my session from Tuesday, and like early around like noon the next day, he just like FaceTimes me and like pick up, and he's like, all right, let's talk about your deadlift from yesterday, because my deadlift's been like tech wise. There's been a lot of changes going on the past couple weeks, so it's a lot of like, and do this, but like it's probably easier to get the point across with like a video. So it's a lot of like him filming videos of himself doing stuff. He doesn't have any specific hours. I think the week before we started, I had like a couple questions on how to do some of the exercises, and he like sent me the technique videos at like 2 a.m. And I was like, what time zone are you in? He's like, oh, I'm on EST. And I was like, oh, damn. He's up at 2 a.m. just like pretending to do like a high row in his living room.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But it's I like it a lot, because it's like it feels a lot more personal in a way. Like it's that's obviously not the reason that I'm like I'm like looking for a powerlifting coach, is not to like have a friend, but it feels a lot more like I'm talking to like a person, like I'm being coached by a person, as opposed to like this mysterious character on the other side of a phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does anyone, I think I know the answer to this question, but I think that Brett, there's a unique case with Brett. Does anyone ever call their clients?
No.
No, right?
Yeah.
No.
Like he's had
Not-
me.
Not randomly. No.
No.
Yeah, no, not randomly.
He's
like,
had
if I'm
me
ever
like
gonna have a call. Go ahead.
he's had me like call him when I get to the gym and like prop him up on a tripod, and then just like talk me through like deadlifts. And I'm like,
That is insane.
That's
crazy.
It worked. Like
Yeah.
there was a session a couple of weeks ago. I was on my week 4, and I hit 255 for a top single, and like the entire time my glute was hurting. I go to my back down, so my glute's still hurting, and I sent him the videos, because I was like, we made changes going into that session, so I was like, okay, how did these look? But my glute's bothering me, and he calls me and he's like, yeah, this just ain't it. And he has,
That is so
it's
funny.
like, yeah, he has me like prop him up on a tripod, and I warm back up to my last back down, and he's just like cueing me through the actual reps, and like the entire time just like no pain. So probably there's some like placebo involved there, but at the same time it's just like it's funny.
So funny.
It's funny to see like something. I don't even know if that's unconventional, or if it's just like none of us have been exposed to that it's like we wouldn't even think of that as like an option. But it's kind of cool to see like, oh, that is like something that like it's essentially like coaching in person, where it's like you're being cued in real time by a person. And for some people that works.
Yeah, the only time I'm ever on a call with a client is just they're not in the gym. It's face to face talking about their training us like at our computers essentially.
Yeah.
I'm curious how Brad. I like the differences that everyone has. I'm curious how Brad, or I guess more so how much he values keeping it equal. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if he coaches someone across the planet where it's kind of like a Chris and Kelly situation where you literally cannot be called in the middle of the gym. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know, maybe he coaches only US lifters, but still, like maybe the US lifter works a night shift and doesn't have access to this face-to-face call. Like I'm curious if Brad like tries to equalize it in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. But he's
No,
also
I'm
at
curious
like
about that.
he's also at I feel like a level where it's kind of just like I think people who are being coached by him like
Work on his
aren't
time.
necessarily, huh?
I said they're just kind of working on his time, like
Yeah,
they,
yeah. It's like I'm not like clawing for his attention. It's kind of just
Oh,
like
sure, yeah.
like whatever, whenever you get back to me, I'm gonna be appreciative of it because it's like
Yeah.
that's what I'm there for,
Yeah. So, how do you guys think that your coach has like most, like the number one thing that has most influenced the way that you coach your athletes that you've learned from your coach? It
I
could
kind
be
of
like
already
communication, technique, or what.
mine was the kind of like view on movement and a lot of like the more nitty gritty biomechanical stuff that like I just haven't seen that much content out
Yeah.
about. And pretty much on every single lift, it's just been like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about that. And then like I go to apply it, and it's just like for some people it just clicks so quickly.
Yeah.
yeah. For me, I'd say broadly speaking, kind of just maybe the way that she communicates and gives feedback, and just being straightforward about some things, but more specifically like how she teaches the hinge. Because I think there was a ton of stuff that we needed to work on off the bat with my deadlift. And we had to pretty much start from the ground up. And I think like seeing her whole process on like how to get someone to hinge that doesn't know how to hinge, being me, has helped me with a lot of my clients who also don't know how to hinge.
Yeah, mine kind of would most likely be what I sort of mentioned with communication. Um, but I guess to sum it up, it would probably just be like how he organizes his system too, because it's very like routine. Every I think it's Friday. Every Friday he sends out his weekly check-in form. You usually get your block like a whole ass week early. Um, feedback is very straightforward, like kind of like me and Andrew were bouncing off of one another. There's not a lot of back and forth dialogue unless it's needed. It's just like you know what to expect. He keeps his word. He never slacks off. He's very communicative. He goes on vacations. I feel like myself and all of his other clients are very understanding of that. He makes it clear when he's going on vacation, for how long, how to communicate on vacation, things like that. It's just very like clear, and there's not a lot of room to fuck up. And if I do fuck up, it's probably my fault. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like the organization of the communication system he has, and just how he like goes so professionally about being a coach, and making a schedule throughout his day and following that schedule, giving himself enough free time, and programming ahead of time, and all that jazz. So that's definitely kind of what's rubbed off on me the most.
For me with Matt, I think the main thing, because it's been so much of what him and I have worked on together, is like programming and coaching through injury and pain. His programming in the time that we've worked together has been very creative, like a lot more creative than what I had previously done in the past, like the strategies that he has tried to take with me to manage my quad issue.
Yeah.
So, just because that has been like so large of a component of our time together, I think that has to be the biggest thing that I've learned from him. And then probably like the secondary thing is just like the professionalism of his service, like the actual systems that he uses. He uses WhatsApp for communication, and before I was working with him, I was just using Instagram DMs, and Instagram DMs are I found to be horrible for communication. And after I had experienced using WhatsApp with Matt, I have found Instagram to be just like so much worse in comparison. So I actually switched over to WhatsApp, from you guys and from my experience with Matt. So that was a big thing, actually. That was a big change for my system.
Just going to WhatsApp?
Yeah, actually. That was a pretty
It's
big
huge.
change. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's so much easier than Instagram. The big thing that I was finding with Instagram was like I would get videos from my athletes and they just like would not play. Like I tried to download them and they would not play.
I've heard the
And
same thing.
I was
a big
getting
issue.
so frustrated with it because if I didn't, it seemed to me like if I didn't get back to a video within like 10 minutes of it being sent, it just would not play. And then also you can't send voice messages over a minute long. And
Devin
I tend
can.
to Devin can
I
for
can't
some reason.
anymore. I can't anymore. They got
Oh,
rid
you
of it for
can't?
some reason. I
They-
could
You had
for
the
Yeah.
sauce for a
months.
little bit.
Dude, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
That was weird.
Like,
But yeah, that was not good because I tend to like ramble a little bit when I send voice messages to some lifters. I'll send like 3 to 4 minute long voice
I do the same
messages.
thing.
And then sometimes what I do is like when I send a block over to a lifter, I'll just send like a voice essay basically. Like I've sent like 10 to 12 minute voice memos of me like
Holy shit, dude.
just going over
That's insane.
changes of a block. And that used to be me sending like 10 to 12 different singular messages on Instagram, but
oh yeah.
now WhatsApp makes it real easy.
I think an underrated like part of going towards a kind of like separate messaging app too is just like literally that, like separating
Workflow.
your like business from anything that could like remotely be personal. Like I think we
Mhm.
all, us three, me, Devin, and Chris, when we started, we're all using iMessage, and like
Yeah.
that was
It's a mess.
I didn't
Terrible.
realize how much of a mess it was until we switched, because it's
Yeah.
like you would get texts from like I don't know, family or friends or just that weren't like business related, and sometimes they would just get lost, and
Yeah.
other times it's just like every time that you see a notification, it's almost like this like you have to look at your phone because it could be a client, and it's at that point too, it's kind of like you only had a small roster, so it's kind of like, you know, I'm gonna try, you know, so hard for these few people and basically like respond instantly to like all of their messages regardless of what it was. And then I didn't realize how like mentally exhausting it was to have that all in one place until we made the switch over to WhatsApp.
Ugh.
I like it's kind of I was talking to Eric Hogan about this too. Third Eric Hogan mentioned this podcast, but
Go.
Basically on the podcast.
it's
Yeah.
also sure you can use iMessage on your laptop, but I like the vibe of WhatsApp because it's like I don't use it for anything else. I mean maybe that's a US thing, but it probably is. But like I don't use it for anything else, so I can open up on my laptop, you know, get on my desk and get in this work vibe and you know, iMessage yeah, like you said, Andy, I used to use it and it works fine, but it's just like it's just not it's in the same spot as everything else. It's not business or that yeah, that's not business. That is business related too and not, but it's just like WhatsApp. You can open it up on your laptop, you can have it on your phone. You can just open up the app on your phone and only have client messages to reply to. So that was a bonus for sure.
I love having access to it on the computer. I try to shift everything away from the phone as much as I can, just because I hate just being on my phone, like feeling like I'm working on my phone all day. It's exhausting.
Yeah,
Having
it
it
can
on
be.
the computer is way easier.
Talk to
And then there's
Marcellus.
the oh yeah, I
Huh?
mean, there's that
Only
too.
on his phone.
Oh my God, I don't know how he does. He writes blocks on his phone.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
I couldn't do it.
There has to
The
be like
only
a
time I make edits to blocks on my phone is if I'm doing just that, which is making an edit, and like
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have access to my laptop and or any computer, and
There has to be a
I
secret
have
or
to make an
something.
edit right now. Yeah.
Dude,
It's
it's a
gotta be
pain in the
something.
ass too. It's a pain in the ass.
It is a pain in
I
the
do the
ass.
same thing, like maybe a last minute change, like, oh, I don't have a chest press at this gym. Can I do dumbbell press instead tomorrow? Sure. And I'm out and about. I can replace the accessory right on the spot. I
Yeah.
don't need to be at my desk for something like that. But dude, it takes me a good like 2 minutes. Like it's like I
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah,
it. It's
to replace one
it's not
cell.
user friendly and the copy paste isn't like it's a pain in the ass.
No, you can't do copy paste.
How long we've
I
been
think
rambling for?
that pretty much wraps it up, huh?
Yeah, I'm getting
Yeah.
sleepy, man.
Is it?
That was a good
How
hour
long
and a
has it
half.
been?
An hour and 20? Hour and 20?
Let's go.
That was good.
Let's go.
Don't forget. Okay.
You gotta leave me a pause. Fucking let me get it. All right. All right. Thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. If you want to check out more of Andrew's stuff, you can check him out on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
It's at SSS Powerlifting.
SSS Powerlifting. If you enjoy, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and rate us on Spotify. Thank you.